When Europeans came into what is now the interior of New York State in the early 1600s, they found major settlements, agricultural development, and functioning democracy among the Haudenosaunee. As trade developed, it became clear that agreements were needed about how the two peoples might live together.
In 1613, the Dutch and Mohawk made a treaty for peaceful relations. That agreement is signified by a wampum belt, known as the Two Row.
The history of our nation is in the wampum belts. And when we make treaties, there's always a belt. We have the Treaty of 1775. We have the Treaty of 1776. We have the Treaty of 1784, Fort Stanwix. We have the Treaty of 1789, Fort Harmar. He said, we need another one. And the day one. That was made by your president, George Washington, as a promise to the Six Nation Confederation that we would have peace and security in our lands as long as the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, as long as the river runs downhill, and as long as the grass is green.
The United States' responsibility to live up to these promises in the covenant chain of treaties is encoded directly into the Constitution. Article 6 states, "This Constitution and the laws of the United States which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made, of which shall be made, under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding."
Together, to live together, to use the good line. That's the message that the Peacemaker brought. That's the message the Onondaga is bringing to its neighborhood.
Today, Haudenosaunee people and allies from throughout New York State are coming together to renew the Two Row Wampum Treaty and live side by side in peace and friendship.
All right, folks, good evening. Very exciting night tonight for a lot of us are excited, but for somebody like myself who's a history buff, I'm very excited to have Nicole with us, and I'm going to bring her right on. She's a book of knowledge, so I'm very happy to have her. Hello, Nicole.
Hi. A book of knowledge?
For what we're... There you go. There you go.
I suggest everybody grabs this book. Please order it because it's great.
So would that be the Longhouse Confederacy, not the Iroquois, correct?
Well, the thing is you have the Longhouse Confederacy. That would be the Hanson Lake Code, but as well, though, you can reference a lot of the stuff in there, and then you can look at the other versions, of the Iroquois, the Mohawk Constitution.
Okay. Well, why don't you? I know most people know. I know a lot of people are excited to have you on here. Most of my followers do know who you are, but maybe for the ones who don't, maybe you could give us a quick introduction. I guess I was excited. I jumped right in there. So.
I see myself as not a troublemaker, but and this is what happens with researchers. Okay. You're never done. You just keep researching all the time, and everybody says, okay, it's enough. Okay, it's enough. And then you always find something new. And the thing is you're only as good as your research. So my background was pharmaceutical market research. And then when I saw what was happening in the healthcare, in the food industry back in 2008, I ended up on Six Nations territory to see how, to make sure that they prepare. Mind you, I didn't think it would take this long, but, with everything, but I'm still here, so it's been one thing after the next. And I had the benefit of learning about the Great Law, meeting some people, learning about the spirit world, all of these things. So it's never been... how can I say? I can't say I'm not busy all the time. Like, yeah. It's impossible. There's so much going on.
It's. I know what you mean, and but it's for the first time in my life. It's it's fun. I'm like, bring me more, give me more, let's go.
Well, there's lots for you to learn, I'll tell you that. And you know, you may end up just like me. So sometimes I think it's a curse, you know. It's like I've never been back to Montreal. So but anyways, the whole thing is that I saw the atrocities that were caused to the people, and I saw both versions, and I like to look at both sides
For
of
sure.
the coin. So I researched and read, and you know, almost around the clock sometimes. I'd be up for 20 hours, and then I'd sleep for 4, and then I'd be back up again. And it was like, oh wow, you know. And okay, so what's the real story here? You know, like I was telling you a little bit about the Haldeman track, and I
Mhm.
said, well, it's actually the Simcoe deed. So you know, when they go to court, then they lose their court case. Why? Because they used
Right.
the wrong thing. So they'd have to name both of them to say, you know, what they needed to say. But again, it was what's been done to these people. I think I told you the story about the Grand River Navigation Company. That
Right.
was theirs, and all of a sudden they claimed in the late 1800s that, oh my God, you know, it went bankrupt, and England said, okay, well, we'll sell it for $30,000 back then.
Mhm.
And but this was the trade right across from the United States, and between them here, all along the Niagara region and all that, and the Great Lakes, to be able to bring, you know, the some of their things to and to sell to the United States, and vice versa. So again, this would have been a very prosperous business. I can't for the life of me think that okay, the end of the 1800s, bankruptcy, really? And then who buys it but the Rand Company? And then in 2009, um I see a story in the paper here that the Grand River Navigation Company was sold for $46 million. So I said, "Oh, I'm gonna start checking things out." And then I found out that you know, ironically, if you look at the history books, and especially the archives from the United States and the archives from here, and you'll see that they were using the Haudenosaunee funds, okay, the Five Nations funds, to fund to pay for nurses, doctors, priests, nuns for and for nuns and teachers right across Canada with their money. Okay, so you can just imagine. And well, they put it all together, right?
Right.
So they made a mint off of the natural resources that they took, that they
Right.
negotiated, and they were supposed to be business partners, you know, and in Canada and the United States, and really, you know, they placed the Indigenous nations right across the border for a reason, and that if Canada and the United States had to go to war, well, they'd be stuck in the middle.
Right.
They'd be attacked first, you know. So when you're reading this stuff, and this is coming from the United States, the Canadian government and United States government, and you know, like it's in their reports. So it's
Right.
like, wow, okay. So they're really trying to get rid of these people, and they're trying to
Right.
use them as border watchdogs, really.
Right. Right.
So,
And
you know,
from so maybe you well, not maybe, you obviously do know more. So from my teachings, was taught that in the beginning of Canada, they based the military off of the Mohawks' fighting style, and that there was an original OPP that was kind of designed to work with the Mohawks. Do you know anything about that?
you were cutting out a bit there, so I'm not too sure. But what did you say? The ODP?
So I was taught that the OPP.
Oh,
Oh, we are glitching there. How are we now? Are we good now?
yeah, you're good.
Okay. I was taught that they based the original military tactics when they created the military here off of the Mohawks fighting style, and that the original, what the OPP now was based off of, was like a crew to protect the Mohawks, is what I was told. Can you tell us anything about that?
Yeah, well, the RCMP was supposed to protect the Mohawks. Well, not just the Mohawks; it was the Five Nations.
Okay.
And
Okay.
but anyways, that was across the board. And the thing is if you really look at the history, the church had a lot to do with that. Okay. In regards to, the church got all of the a lot of the indigenous lands, all of these things, not necessarily the government itself, but the church got a lot of lands, and then, you know, made sure that the RCMP would protect the nations. But yeah, they took all of their stuff. It's just like a government. Okay, the United States, in the United States, it's based on the Five Nations.
Right. I've been showing, the last couple of nights, we've been showing some Paul Delaronde videos and Oren Lyons, and they were talking about the Great Law a bit. I've been trying to focus everybody on the Two Row, and we're just starting to dive into the Great Law now. So it's perfect timing that you're on here tonight. So I'm just like, if anybody, I told anybody to have some questions ready if they do too. Obviously, I have a lot. I asked you one on the phone that I'd like you to explain to everybody, is because I find one of the hardest things trying to explain these things to people is for them to put their perspective in the fact that these treaties were signed long before Canada was even a thought. And so who were these treaties signed with, essentially? Like,
well, the representatives of Britain.
Right. Okay. So where does that sit today?
Well, today, what they did is, over time, back in 1982, if you remember that. Now, I don't know if people are hearing me properly, because when you speak, you keep breaking up. So is everybody in the chat able to hear me, or am I cutting out?
I'm hearing you good, so I hope everybody else is as well. Let us know, guys, in the comments, please.
Yeah, because I don't know if it's my side or...
I haven't heard any glitch from you, so yes.
Okay.
We got a yes here, so thank you, guys. There's Nicole is loud and clear. I can hear. Okay, I think we're good.
Okay, good.
Thanks,
guys. Okay, I'm just having a hard time hearing you.
Okay.
But the thing is the treaties were made on behalf of Britain, the UK, and with the indigenous nations. But some of the treaties were also done here in Canada and even in the States with the Jesuits.
Okay.
Okay, with the Catholic Church.
Right.
So this is where you see Restigouche and the Mi'kmaq. The Mi'kmaq got some land back. Gary Metallic and his father were able to get a nice chunk back. But again, that was, they went to the church and they got it back from the church.
Okay.
So
is that, sorry to cut you off. Is that, I noticed on our tour down here, there seems to be that and I haven't got the opportunity to learn as much about the Mi'kmaq as I have the Haudenosaunee yet, but from what I can see, they have a way bigger relation to the church than the Iroquois.
Well, it all depends with the Iroquois where you go. I mean, you know, a lot of them are churchgoers. Still to this day here on Six Nations, there's different churches. There's a church almost on every street. And if you go to band council, well, the band councils have the Lord's Prayer before they start their meetings.
Okay.
You know, so which to me was like, it's supposed to be the Thanksgiving address.
That's a long.
Yeah. And you've got the short version and the long version of the Thanksgiving address. But I'll tell you, the children here, I mean, they're just beautiful. They learn the language and they say the Thanksgiving address. These are like 3, 4, 5-year-olds. And I was just dumbfounded and in awe of seeing how great they were able to do it. And they did the long version. Okay. So I was like, oh my God, these children are so lucky to be able to learn, because if you learn something about the indigenous peoples here, or the Mohawks or whoever, part of the five nations. They would learn to listen, okay, which is something we're not taught, okay, on our side. And they can remember, they can repeat, okay, exactly what you just said, practically word for word. And that is taught when we were shown how to sit around the fire
Mhm.
and to go back and forth. And it's like, oh my God, after 3 words, I forgot what the rest was. And this is their negotiations, right? And I could see how some of the meetings were extremely long,
Right.
but it was one of the best experiences I've ever had, because it taught me that the difference between the two is that when you speak, they retain everything. And that's what they're taught from a young age. So this way, when they have to go, and they told me that the reason why they did that was so that the runners who were going from nation to nation would be able to repeat the exact same thing that was said.
Okay. Okay.
So if you're not paying attention to what's being said and you're going back and forth and negotiating, well, you might drop the ball on something, because the way that it happens is you listen to everything they say, and then you have to repeat it before
Okay.
you speak.
Okay.
Okay. And then you have to say what you have to say. And it's like, okay, after the third word, mm, uh, I'm done for. And not very many of us could do it. I'll tell you that.
For sure.
You know?
It's I've been on this path for about 6 months, and it's the most beautiful thing that's ever happened. I'm a whole different person already, and I'm so excited for as soon as like my matriarch or the elders that I learned from tell me about there's something new or something new we're gonna do. I'm just like, okay, let's go. it's
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
It is, because like, especially with the Great Law, there's a lot of good teachings in there. Like, I'm not one that would push that on anybody.
Mhm.
That has to be your choice. But the thing is it's all about common sense and how you interact with others. So that should actually be a psychology course. you
Right.
know it's not all like love and roses and
Hmm.
it's very down to earth and basic, and getting back to the roots of everything, and looking at everything in a different manner. That's why, like, I think the Thanksgiving address, like, I mean, we learned our prayers is to ask for favor. Theirs is to say thanks.
Yeah, right.
And
It's
there's the difference.
completely the opposite of everything. It's
Yeah.
to be like originality, creation, asking questions. it's
Hmm.
it goes against everything we've ever learned, and it's nice to see. And then there's one teaching there where Paul Delaron says there's a 10-year-old girl stood up and made change with the Great Law, and that's what
Yeah.
it's for.
Paul
Like
is
that's
Paul
pure
is great.
democracy, is it
Yeah.
not? Like
Yeah.
it's
Well,
yeah.
that's who I go to the Great Law here, and Paul was there, and then we've
Okay.
had a few chats, and yeah, so I really like listening to what they present, and and when you learn about the spirit world and all this, and then you witness things, it's like, wow, okay,
Yeah.
so it's like, wow, I never would have learned that if I would have landed on Six Nations territory.
Right. I agree. I feel the same. I like 4 years ago, even I would have thought myself today was crazy. And now I'm just like,
Not at
no,
all.
this is
Not at
real.
all.
This is
It's the
real.
other side. It's the other
Right.
side,
Exactly.
you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I imagine we're going to talk about it for a while. So I'm going to ask you a big question is what is the importance of the Two Row Wampum today?
Actually, the importance of the Two Row Wampum today is that they're trying to forget about it. That's the important part. The most, but what we have to do is remind everybody of it. Okay, because and this is why we were in Ottawa, and I had gotten a license for the whole weekend in regards to honoring the Two Row, and that we were going to place the people, the Canadian citizens and the Indigenous nations in a partnership in our Constitution. and that was our purpose for being there. So, and then I sent them all of our rights and to the RCMP and everybody. So they really treated us really well all weekend. It was too bad not that many people showed up. But the thing is a lot of I find that the Indigenous nations are kind of afraid type, in a way of dealing with the people instead of with the government. So it's almost like they'd rather deal with the government than deal with the people. But at the same time, if we don't do what we propose to do, is we're both going to lose our country, and we've already lost most of our natural resources. But in what we're doing legally at the international level, we can take back our natural resources and the control of our country.
Okay, very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
We've been making quite a buzz with the Two Row lately, and it's beautiful to see, but it's, I'm trying to learn as much as I can, as fast as I can, and teach it as fast as I can, which is not an easy thing to do. So everybody was very excited. I was excited to get a different perspective on here, preaching the Two Row that wasn't of Indigenous bloodline, so.
Yeah, well, it's common sense again. You have people like, see, in between us and the United States, there's a different dynamic there. And before, I should have sent you this picture. What people don't know is that Canada, okay, it was called Canada, and it went all the way down to Louisiana. Okay, it went like this and then down instead of right across.
Okay.
So after the War of 1812, then that got separated off from the States.
Right. Okay.
Okay. So we went this way instead. So those territories were lost. But if you look at the United States, the way it was, you had the 13 colonies, then you had the Indigenous nations in between, and then you had the French colonies that had gone all the way down to Louisiana. And that's why if you look at St. John's, New Brunswick, and then they'll tell you the stories when, they told everybody, oh, there's a big disease, there's a plague, and you need to leave here. Got them all on the boat and then went and dropped them off in New Orleans.
Right. That's where I'm from, is St. John, New Brunswick. So I know those stories very well. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I went to St. John's quite a few years back with Barb and Barbara.
Okay, cool.
The Cayuga women from here, and we stayed there for almost a week. So, and the whole week we were there, we were able to see Nova Scotia.
Nice.
Yeah,
that's where I'm at right now, is Nova Scotia, but I'll be heading your way here very shortly.
Okay. So, anyways, the Two Row, needs to be explained. It's very simple. You've got in Canada, well, with Britain, it was treaties. Okay, treaties were had with the nations, and what the Haudenosaunee did is, we're going to be partners. We're brothers. You're not my father. Okay, we're brothers, and we do business together, and we go along the river the same direction. And then the Silver Covenant chain, that's to make sure that nobody goes ahead of the other. And you need to clean that off once in a while, right?
Yeah, give it a polish.
Yeah, and nobody's supposed to go ahead of the other, and really respect each other. And that's what they had agreed to. And they keep forgetting about it. But the thing is when you look at, if we go back to the War of 1812 and all that, the Haudenosaunee down in the States, I've sent you the court case where, the 2.5 million acres were taken from them, but they were promised that their treaties would be honored that they had with Britain, and everything would be respected. And shortly after, it was a change of story.
That's a lot of land. That's a lot of land.
A lot of land. So they've got reason to be upset. And one of the lawyers that's working on that case, he suggested for us to read, and I would think that everybody should go and read this. But it's Thomas Paine. Okay, he's one of the people who was working on the new Constitution for the independence of America, United States, and he talks about reconciliation. Okay, that no matter how you slice it, you can't forget. And for them, it was like, well, let's forgive England and we'll be friends with them again and we'll stay the way we are. And then it was like, listen, at some point we need to stand up. Right now, the nations wouldn't be able to do that. But the thing is, I think all the peoples together, we can stand up and make sure that everybody's treated fairly, equally. We're all humans. And it's time that we stop apologizing, because every time something doesn't happen, we have to apologize again. So, and it's the people. The way that our government works right now, the people are being taxed. They're spending money like this government is just right out to lunch.
Yeah.
And as it was time for the United States to walk away from Britain, because Britain would just keep, oh, we're sorry and we'll do right. At a certain point, you have to say, okay, enough is enough.
Right.
And this is what Thomas Paine writes about. And he talks about the reconciliation.
Okay.
So what he wrote was Common Sense. Okay. The title is Common Sense by Thomas Paine. So I'm just going to look for the first page here. I was still going through it and trying to make some notes, because, I swear to God, over 200 years ago, they were brighter. People were smarter, more intellectual than most are now.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, because they didn't have much excitement, right? They didn't have TV, so they read a lot. Mm-hmm. And they wrote a lot, so they were able to exercise their brains a lot more than what we do now. Sure. We're just very lucky.
I have a feeling they probably listened a lot better too.
Yeah, probably. Okay, page 11. Where's this? Well, anyways, he talks about national. This is from the National Humanities Center. Thomas Paine, Common Sense. And it's just about 30 pages or so. But it makes for a really interesting read. And here he says, men of passive tempers look somewhat lightly over the offenses of Britain, and still hoping for the best, are apt to call out, come, we shall be friends again for all this. But examine the passions and feelings of mankind. Bring the doctrine of reconciliation to the touchstone, in brackets test, of nature, and then tell me whether you can hereafter love, honor, and faithfully serve the power that has carried fire and sword onto your land, sorry. If you cannot do all these, then you are only deceiving yourselves, and by your delay, bringing ruin upon posterity. So your future connection with Britain, whom you can neither love nor honor, will be forced and unnatural, and being formed only on the plan of present convenience. Will a little time fall into a relapse more wretched than the first? But if you say you can still pass the violations over, then I ask, has your house been burnt? Has your property been destroyed before your face? Are your wife and children destitute of a bed to lie on or bread to live on? Have you lost a parent or a child by their hands, and yourself the ruined and wretched survivor? If you have not, then you are not a judge of those who. Then are you not a judge of those who have? But if you have, you still can shake hands with the murderers. Then you are unworthy of the name husband, father, friend, or lover, or whatever may be your rank or title in life. You have the heart of a coward and the spirit of a sycophant.
I like that a lot.
It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, waving your face.
We're told, turn the other cheek, forgive. But at some point, you have to draw a line. And this is what he's saying. At some point, you need to draw the line. And I think the time is ripe because now both peoples on each side are being abused,
Right.
coerced into vaccinations and all that, with something that does, based on a lie. If you've seen my presentation,
Right.
and all for transhumanism, DNA. Big thing. DNA is the new fourth industrial revolution.
Mm-hmm.
So let's switch that around and make this the the power shift revolution, where the
Right.
people are above government, because legally that's our right.
Absolutely.
And that's what I fight for, and both peoples. The nations should have been, when you look at Canada, United States, and the indigenous nations are both North American. They're North American first from Turtle Island, and then whether they live in the United States or Canada, then they're either added to Canadian, a Canadian resident or a United States resident. But really, those two countries supersede, do not supersede the indigenous nations.
Right.
They came after, and that's not their fault, right?
Right.
So, and the borders. So when you look at the what was that treaty?
J Treaty.
The J Treaty, yeah, that was between Canada and the United States. The nations didn't take part in that treaty, but it was about them being able to cross. Now Canada is reneging on that.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
It's easier for them to get into the States than it is to come back.
Okay, interesting.
Okay, and when how can I say, when the nations went, when we had the so-called patriation, which is actually decolonization. Okay. If Trudeau was alive today, I'd be stomping on his head. His dad.
Right. The first one.
The son too. If I had a chance, I'd do the same thing to him. Mm-hmm. But gotta be nice here, Nicole.
Yeah.
But in 1982, it was all about that patriation. And when just before that, 1980-81, when the Indigenous nations got together and went to the UK to petition there, what really helped them was one of the justices, Lord Denning, and Lord Denning, really what they were trying to say, they were trying to tell the nations that they had no right in the English court. They had to take it to court here in Canada because they had passed that on to Canada, 1930, 1931. That's up to Canada now to do it, to take care of it. But really, Canada was only a caretaker government.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so and you have to really look at the history and look at the court cases and then read between the lines, right? And Lord Denning was like throwing hints left and right. So anyways, finally, Lord Denning decided we're going to answer these court cases. But then he said something, okay? They weren't really they weren't supposed to be there because they were the problem of Canada now, not the UK. Since 1931, but yet in 1931, because of the clause number 7 that got inserted, 1931 was supposed to be a liberation for all the countries, but what it was a coup d'etat by the countries to form a bigger government of the heads of all of the countries.
Right.
Okay, and then have the king there at the time. It was a king. So anyways, and because one of the kings didn't want to be crowned, he was too busy trying to do other things.
Right.
So they had to get Elizabeth's father to become king. So because the first one, the one that was supposed to really be king, was having an affair with a woman in the States, and he wanted nothing to do with being a king. He wanted his life. He was totally in love. So, Elizabeth's dad became the king. And so when you really see what that was that's the first coup was in 1931, where they recreated. Nobody was really freed in that sense, but we've always been an independent country. Okay, like, and then they send the monies to the UK, in that sense. So it was, everything we could do, we started doing on our own here, but at the same time, still under the British Crown. And they did that to create the Commonwealth of Nations, well, not the Commonwealth of Nations, but the Commonwealth realm became like sort of like the imperial parliament.
Okay.
So that they can all work together, and then the crown is on top of that. So they said, oh, well, we're going to tell everybody that the crown is divisible, that the queen could be divided, or the king, and no, they can't.
Okay.
They can't. They can say, yeah, she could be the queen. You can have her like the Queen of Canada, the Queen of Australia, whatever. So that if you don't want to offend your people and say the Queen of the UK, but she remains first and foremost the Queen of the UK, and that's who she has to answer to.
Okay.
The United Kingdom.
Right.
And then all of her realms. But at the same time, again, that we were told, oh no, she's, the Governor General takes the place of the Queen because the Queen can't be here. So the Governor General is only here to give royal assent, to sign for laws, and it has to do everything that the government tells it to. And it's mostly ceremonial. Well, I found out that even in 1975, it was not just ceremonial. They have an actual, the Queen never relinquished her power, neither did the King before, and it's in their titles. Okay, and so when we're looking at in 1975, what happened is the Australian Governor General actually fired the Prime Minister. Just by a declaration, even though he had the Prime Minister had the support of the whole House. So all the lawyers were saying, oh my God, that can't happen, and it can't be, and the Governor General can't do that. And it was Lord Kerr, who was the Governor General back then, and he's writing back and forth to the Queen, her secretary. And so when you talk to the secretary, it's like talking to the Queen, because he has to repeat everything to her, and then he answers back for her. And Kerr didn't even ask permission to the Queen because he has the same power she does.
Interesting.
So he didn't have to ask her permission because he was protecting the crown.
Right.
Because why? The Prime Minister wanted to start talking about Australia becoming a republic.
Wow.
So he protected the crown.
So with that being said, say we were able to muster up enough of a movement here to stand with our brothers of the Haudenosaunee. What do we do then?
Well, the thing is again, like we're really in a predicament now. I thought for sure once we once you look at all of the findings that I have in that presentation, I put it all out there. And the thing is 1982, the Canada did not finalize what needed to be done. And within 3 years, they were supposed to have a referendum with all of the Indigenous peoples agreeing to whatever was going to be in that constitution. Okay. So it was up to everybody on each territory and reserve to speak up, okay, to have a referendum on what they well, first of all, they would have had to get together with the Prime Minister and the premiers and negotiate. But the people should have had before they finalized anything, they were supposed to have a referendum of the nations, by the nations, whichever way they wanted it done. Okay. And then on our side, it was a full referendum for all of the provinces, the people in the provinces, not the provinces themselves, but all of the peoples, all Canadians had to go to referendum to see if we accepted that constitution. Okay. And if we wanted to keep the crown. So Trudeau tried to avoid all that at all costs. Okay, so they had 15 years, 3 years with the Indigenous nations. They were supposed to have meetings within 1 year with the band council or the heads.
Right.
But band council, we all know, is an arm of the Canadian government.
Right.
Okay. They're management for the Canadian government.
Right.
So, anyways, there's a way that they can get around that, and they can actually get rid of band council legally. But they need 51% of the signatures in each territory to remove band council. But the
Okay.
thing is they have to prove that they have that it's all about administration, right?
Right.
So they'd have to prove that they have a way of handling the funds and everything else, or
Like
otherwise
a self-governing system, so to speak.
yeah. Well, the thing is all they have to do is tell band council, well, now you become our administrators without
Okay.
decision-making authority. That belongs to the people.
Okay, interesting.
Some reserves, some territories, I should say, have done that already.
I like that you. I'm always correcting myself on that too, because they hate that word.
Well, the thing is we you know, and you're gonna live through this. You know, you're gonna have both sides hitting you on the head here.
Mhm.
Okay, be ready to wear a hard hat.
I've been wearing one for
Yeah, because we can't please everybody. And the thing is you'll have some that'll accuse you of don't call us indigenous and don't call us nations, we're tribes.
Right.
So, but if you go somewhere else and you say tribes, well, then they want to hit you on the head. So, well, we're not tribes. You know, like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Okay, like take everything in stride. Don't let it get to you. You know, I walked into this totally blind. Okay. And 16 years later, almost, I'm starting to be wiser. And that's why I told you, I think you and I need to have a chat here because
Absolutely.
it's not going to be easy.
Mhm.
You know, you've got everybody's got different views, different history backgrounds, different history knowledge or retention. Some don't even know their own history on either side. Canadians are like, you're going to get it from both sides. Trust me on that one. But the thing is maybe I can save you some hardships, okay, through experience. So, but Canadians need to realize that there's a lot of atrocities that were done, and yes, they have protected rights. So no matter what we try to do in Canada to save our country, we have to include the Indigenous nations because of international law. And not having the international come down on us to stop us from trying to save our country because we're not doing it properly. There's a certain way of doing it. Neither side can do it on their own. And especially on the Canadian side, because it's our government, we can do whatever we want to our government. But the thing is again, the nations will, you know, you don't want to leave them out and say, okay, well, we're going to fix our government, then we're going to come and talk to you after. Right. You know, you want to be able to say, hey, this is a vast territory. We're all going to end up losing this place. Now it's time to stand together, to unite. We're all human beings. We can talk about the other stuff after, but right now, everybody should be sitting at the table. It's like the Indigenous nations here, right across Canada, should be sitting in Parliament, some of them, okay, at least on some of the issues or, you know, departments. Same as with the United States. So both the nations in Canada and the United States should be sitting in both governments.
Right.
To be fair.
Right.
You got two nations.
And we, you know,
and the Indigenous nations.
There's a lot of healing that needs to be done on both sides, and it's a pretty healing culture. It's
yeah. So when they're saying, you know, so this is why I liked, you know, what Thomas Paine said. At some point, you know, you're screaming reconciliation. Well, you can do some reparations, but if you don't really acknowledge and everybody understand what happened, and because, you know, the same thing with the residential schools, you know, that happened to a lot of people worldwide. That didn't just happen to just the Indigenous nations here. Ireland really got a real, between the Protestants and the Catholic ones really got it rough over there by the Protestants and whatnot, and that's where that all started, was with the Protestant church, not the Catholic church necessarily. So you have to really look at the big picture. Even though the nations here think that it only happened to them, no, it happened worldwide, and taking over of countries. I mean, if you look at history, and this is one thing that I learned, is I went through history. I really looked at what happened during World War II, and it'd be really interesting to let you know that that was a setup.
Yes, it was.
That was a setup.
Yes, it was. I found you might find this quite interesting. So my grandfather was like my whole world, and this would be the best night of his life if he was alive. This was right up his alley. The night he passed, I was looking through his things to find some nice things to put on him and stuff, and he had placed it so somebody would find it. It was a Nazi locket in onyx stones, because his mother had fled Italy pregnant, so they were under Mussolini. And Grampy always said, I think Hitler was the good guy.
Over 30 million people died. Okay. Over 30 million people died or disappeared.
And we only talk about which ones.
Yeah. Exactly. So when you look,
this has made my night.
hindsight is 2020. And we need to learn from past mistakes of everybody else. And I think the time is ripe. Thomas Paine's time, when they walked away from the UK, now it's our time. Because again, we were decolonized already. We don't need to ask permission. It's already done. They're just waiting. Everything is still locked up in the UK. So to come back, I want to finish this, because in 1982 with Lord Denning, and what I caught from what he was saying was that by rights, the Indigenous nations had to go to court here in Canada only, not in the UK. But all they had to say was, but the Constitution is still in the legislature of the United Kingdom. Therefore, that's who our treaties are with.
Interesting.
But because of a choice of words, that could have been totally different.
Wow.
If the lawyers knew what to say. Okay.
And or did they know?
Didn't know. No, they didn't know. And it's just like now, right? I thought, okay, well, we have the right to our collective and self-determination, like our collective rights of self-determination, to decide what we really want for this country. Trudeau actually said decolonization in the news, and but used the word patriation to try to kind of, make sure that the nations didn't hear about this, and then the first thing here comes out the red paper and the white paper and the big fight. And so if you start reading through all that, the nations were saying, hey, well, what's going on, but they were all getting ready for decolonization, because that had come out in 1960, and that was already determined in 1945. Okay. So they finally, finished their documents for self-determination. And then after that, 1966 was the one for civil and political rights, because our right is political. Okay. So they really go around with those words, right? So the justices will say, well, that's political. That's not us. That's the government. We can't it's not justifiable. We can't go to court on that. It's a political move. Well, we have a political move. The thing is there's no laws giving us those rights in the charter. So the government made sure. So if you look at who was actually teaching in Ontario law school, they kind of subverted everything. They didn't take the best teachers. They took the worst teachers that were controversial and placed them to teach law, so that everybody could kind of forget about the rule of law and subvert it.
Crazy.
Yeah. I mean, not so crazy though, because they got away with it for over 40 years.
That's textbook masonry.
Oh, yeah. Another thing I know about. But anyway, like
You can't know all this and not know about masonry.
yeah, exactly. So or spirituality for that one. But life has been extremely interesting to say the least. So when you look at all of the atrocities they've done, we have some reparations to make, but at the same time, we're not the ones who committed all these things, and this is again, well, it's our ancestors, yeah, but we're not supposed to be paying for the sins of our fathers. Seriously, how long do we pay for that? But really, when you look at the whole thing, we're all human beings. This country is big enough; everybody can prosper, and everybody can start respecting each other. But respect comes with acknowledging, or trying to say, hey, yeah, these things did happen. And yes, if you're angry, I understand a bit of what you're going through, because now our government has practically committed the worst crime ever worldwide, which is doing this SARS thing that actually was nothing more than a common cold.
Yeah.
And force injecting people with something that's now killing them.
Yeah.
So it was a huge charade. They trashed our economy for it. They redid all of our policies. They changed all of our laws. They changed the culture of Canada altogether. In order to be able to go into this transhumanism, so that, because in Canada, our genome is supposed to be protected. Now they don't want that. So how do they destroy it? They did a really good job so far. So how, when are people going to wake up and say, hey, that DNA they took from the PCR tests, now they've got a huge, huge data bank at the international level for this, that they collected for free and yet sold one little PCR test in the States. And I've got that in my presentation for $200 US. And this was a negative test that they took March 20th, 2020. Or, well, March 18th, 2020, should say. That's how fast they were starting to sell the PCR tests with people's DNA.
Crazy.
Yep. Very crazy.
Looking back now, it feels a lot longer than 4 years. A lot.
It was worth a lifetime, because we weren't used to that. What we're seeing now, how, they got everybody's DNA, every nation's DNA, everybody's DNA for going through these PCR things. And the thing is by law, they had to actually explain everything and give us a document, because the UK has those documents where people had to sign informed consent for the PCR test, because they're taking your DNA.
Right.
Same with the injections. They had to tell you exactly what was going, like what it was, and but none of them, they could not say that they didn't know how long it would, if there was going to be any side effects. Oh no, it's safe. You don't know it's safe. Not everybody's
safe and effective.
Yeah. But we're not all one size fits all here. People have allergies. People have, other things, other issues. And I didn't get vaccinated. I would have rather. I had the chance to. I refused it, and I was willing to die within an hour. Back in 2022.
What do you mean? Can you elaborate?
Well, I didn't want to take a PCR. I refused a PCR test. I refused any blood. But I had gotten sick, and I only had about an hour. Well, the doctor told me, she says, we have 45 minutes to get you into the operating room. Otherwise, you only have another hour after that.
Wow.
And I said no to the PCR test to the point where the nurse threw it, cried, and then pushed me. And she says, "Well, we can't take you to surgery then." I said, "Well, then wheel me out." And first thing I knew, she drove me right in front of the doors of the surgical unit, like the surgery. So, but then they said, "Well, you might need a transfusion." I said, "Well, I don't want one." So I signed that they couldn't give me one and no resuscitation. Um, and then all of a sudden, it's like somebody slapped me upside the head and said, "Oh," I said, "Bring that back. I'm going to sign it under duress." And if something happens to me, and I was hoping, right, if they give me DNA, I mean, a blood transfusion, and something happens, I've got something. I mean, I'm ready to die either ways anyway.
Right.
You know? I'm going to take my chances. I said,
Right.
give me that back. And I signed it. And I put down that I was being forced into that because there was no more supplies of pure blood. Okay.
Well, I'm sorry you had to go through that. I know there's so many horror stories.
Yeah.
It's
well, I mean, I stuck to my guns and won. So
yeah, that's good. And it's so sad because if everybody just did that for one day,
yeah,
that's all it takes.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like it's a never-ending story. And how do we stop this? People are dying left and right. Here on Six Nations, some people were dying every week. 6 or 7, sometimes 12. Seniors and all that. It's really, really atrocious to see what they've done. And now that how many were vaccinated with something they don't even know is how it's going to affect them eventually, and all this, and having to live with that's mental torture.
Right.
Our government needs to be behind bars.
Yeah.
And the world, all the other countries that are not part of the 67, okay, under the Commonwealth, need to be able to charge Canada, because if you look at and again, I mentioned this in my presentation, South Africa actually went after Pfizer. Like they won their case, and Pfizer had to divulge all of the contracts and how much they paid for it. But they were crying because there was not enough vaccine for them because Canada bought 5 times the amount of people they have. So, but ironically, it's like, hey, you guys are lucky.
Yeah, you lucked out.
Quit whining. You don't need them, okay?
Yeah, you don't want this.
Stick to ivermectin. So, like, it's totally nuts because it was a total fraud, and it's our country that helped this along. Our country is the number one advancing global governance and the WEF agenda. And if you see all of the people from the WEF, so today I sent out almost 5,000 emails today. I thought it was 6,000, but it's actually 5,000 that actually made it through. And this was to every mayor and councillor across Canada. I still have 3 provinces to do. But the East, Nova Scotia, PEI,
thank you for all your work.
Newfoundland, Labrador, and New Brunswick all got theirs. Okay. They're looking at their emails this weekend. I've seen that they've opened them up.
They might be reading it while watching us right now.
Yeah. So anyways, and it was basically the same one that you got, right? In the newsletter, but at the bottom I changed it to say that I would like to meet with all of them. Okay, that if there's a way that we can meet either in person or that I'd like to have an appointment with them to explain, and for them to know that if they're creating, actually, what I'm going to tell you exactly what I said. I'm just going to go to it now. Hey, were we off? Hello? Are you there? Okay, not sure if it's me.
Oh, there we are. I think we're good.
Okay, so I don't know if that was me that froze.
I'm not sure if it's my whole screen went, so I think that might have been me that time.
Oh, okay. So I'm just going to go and read what I'd written here. It starts with to all chiefs, mayors, and councillors, a new era for Canada in honoring all human rights. And then you have the picture of of my presentation where you see a hand with actually Trudeau being picked up by the back of the scruff there. Yeah. So this is what they see, and it says collective on the phone, the cell phone. It says collective declaration of independence, and the challenge. Right, there are only three things that allow politicians to rule over the people: blind trust of others, ignorance of legal facts, lack of action by the people. And what can change this into a power shift? Well, the collective declaration of independence. So, anyways, here it's I have also. Has the Liberal government committed the COVID-19 international crime against humanity by wanting to be number one in the transhumanist WEF agenda? And then I have number one, it's time for the Governor General to fire Trudeau. It's time for Canadians and the Indigenous peoples to take our full rights stolen from us since 1982 through the people's referendums for both. And then that the Governor General needs to not accept a Liberal NDP coalition or any coalition with the Liberals, and needs to move on from that. So here I put down, this is an important message to all chiefs, mayors, and councillors. If you are not fully aware of your constituents, citizens, and people's non-derogable rights when creating bylaws and laws, etc., or policies, I have inserted the link below of the Syracuse Principles for you. So many have clicked on it, actually.
Yeah, because you can see.
Yeah. So then I can check it all. So then I have object, Canadian citizens and Indigenous peoples reinstating their national collective civil and political rights denied to us since 1982, legally placing the people above governance. And then I go into the
cool. Very cool.
So yeah.
Thank you very much for doing that for all of us.
Well, it was time I did it. And I've been wanting to do it, but again, I can only go as much as I feel good. So at the same time, it's like trying to keep up to everything that's going on and trying to take the international law courses. Like, I'm not a lawyer or anything, but they're giving out these courses for us to understand human rights and that. And then I got to meet Andrew, who is taking care of the Onondagas in the States.
Cool.
So for him, it's like, I can't wait to hear his reply when he gets to the office on Monday. And because the Onondaga should be, because this was agreements before the United States took over, the UK is still liable because they are North American, which includes Canada. And the thing is the UK had to make reparations. If you remember the Tea Party, have you ever heard of the Tea Party? They dressed up as Native people, Indigenous men, and went and trashed. And then the UK had to pay reparations. So the Haudenosaunee down in the States also deserve reparations from the UK. Because that had nothing to do with them. That there was a deal with the UK.
Right.
Okay. So I don't know what he's going to think of that, but I think that it's going to be relevant for the they're in court. They're going to be they were accepted to be in front of the Association of American States. Which is like a portion of the UN, another portion of the UN for the Americas. So, that could be something that could be mentioned. But at the same time, the Haudenosaunee down in New York should be meeting with the Haudenosaunee here and rattle the cages.
Rattle the cage. I like how you said that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. I have a feeling there's a gentleman sitting watching this that liked that term as well.
Well, it's almost like rattling. the covenant chain, right? Hey, somebody's
Yeah, well,
responsible here.
that's
Yeah,
exactly what he says. Is we've been tugging on that for a long time,
yeah.
and nobody's been answering.
And like I said, Thomas Paine is right. You can't talk about reconciliation and then throw a bunch of money at people and then expect them to forget everything.
Right.
You need to fix the problem.
Yep.
Money doesn't fix problems.
Yeah. I'm sick of looking at all these. Oh, let's fix this symptom here and symptom here. No, we need to go to the roots.
We need to take off the band-aids.
Yep.
And really discuss things the proper way. We're all human beings, first and foremost. And we have one creator, even though some follow others or other false ones. So anyways, that's the story for another time. But
We talk about all that on here as well, so you're not going to break anybody's heart on this feed, I don't think.
yeah, well, the thing is it's already 8:07.
Right. Well, that's what I was going to say. I have a big meeting tomorrow, but I would definitely like to have you on again, and I very much look forward to meeting you in person in a couple weeks.
Likewise, and my house smells just like spaghetti sauce. So
I love spaghetti.
I'll send you a few jars.
Okay. Well,
Okay,
thank you very much, Nicole. Thank you.
Hey, anytime you want to talk, just give me a shout. And like I said, you're gonna have to have thick skin because you're gonna be getting hit on the head by both sides.
Right.
Because a lot of people don't understand or they misunderstand. They don't know the whole story. So, just bear with it because I think it's worth fighting for. It's everybody's future, and we all deserve a great future and to change taxation into dividends.
Right. Well, I really appreciate your time. Really do. And everybody else is saying thank you. There's lots of
thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
And don't forget to join the Canadian People's Union because that's how we're going to get out of this with our referendum. So
I will make sure to add,
that's what we need to do.
Sorry to cut you off. I didn't mean to do that. I will make sure to add all your links in the comments here for everybody to follow if they don't already. And yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Well, that was even better than I thought it would be. That was, I think we could talk all night, but yeah, as you guys know, I've got a big meeting tomorrow, and you just heard how much she's got on her plate, and I imagine there's probably a lot more she didn't tell us about that she's got on her plate as well. So I'm going to cut this off because Carlene just got here before the live too, guys. So my big stress is out of the way. So thanks again to Nicole. Very exciting night. And I hope some people learn some things, and maybe this solidifies what we've been trying to educate you on here for a while, getting it from another perspective who's far more knowledge in the subject matter than I am. So that was my real big hope with this. And I think that if you want to prove us both wrong with facts, we'd both like to see them. And I hope everybody has a good night.